I'd like to have a meta discussion about two topics. The first is gateway activities. The second is layers of abstraction. An example of layers of abstraction is surface level. You know someone who uses marijuana. First abstraction. You know some statistics about how the population uses marijuana. Second abstraction. You know some history and studies that have been done to try and figure out if marijuana is a gateway drug, which could cause users to seek out more dangerous drugs. This layer could discuss hypothetical percentages of marijuana users who later on tried hard drugs or who became habitual users of hard drugs. Or it could become a pharmaceutical conversation discussing which chemical reactions in the brain cause some drugs to become addictive and others not, with the hypothesis that an addictive drug would lead to seeking out alternatives if it is not available, while a non-addictive drug might have withdrawal symptoms but would not necessarily lead to alternative seeking. The third abstraction: compare and contrast drug addictions with gambling addictions, thrill seeking, sex and porn addictions, and other activities that superficially resemble addictions to see if they are triggering the same neurochemical reactions during cravings, hits, and withdrawal. Fourth abstraction: compare and contrast the addiction over time patterns with other patterns such as learning new skills and languages, forming attachments in relationships, childhood mental and physical growth, parenting, grief, adapting to technology, political viewpoint changes over a person's lifetime, career trajectory, and franchise expansion over time. Fifth abstraction: how do research papers and meta analysis papers and collective knowledge about a topic compare to other patterns? And how do the layers of abstraction themselves compare to this? Sixth abstraction: are there any universal commonalities in patterns? And if so, are they caused by the limitations of the humans involved in studying them? Or is there an innate recursiveness to our cosmos? The lines between different layers of abstraction are blurry, and this is just an example. I did group two things together on the second layer, so other people might want to group together layers 3 and 4, maybe even 5. I often find that when I'm attempting to discuss controversial topics, I flow between the layers and try to think about how they influence each other. Certain drugs can be gateway drugs, but marijuana isn't one of them. Does that imply certain video games can cause violence, even if we haven't found one yet? Should sugar be considered an addictive drug? Is bread a gateway to cake? The difference between bread with visible seeds to brown bread to white bread to brioche bread to cake does form a spectrum, and the line between cake and bread is blurry enough that some places already consider brioche to be a type of cake. What about the relationship between digital activities and physical ones? For gambling, we have enough historical data to say that slot machines and digital poker are just as addictive and life destroying as physical dice and cards. What about instant messenger services? Nobody bats an eye if two friends have an hour-long phone call. But if someone is texting on their phone with someone for an hour, there is a certain cultural suspicion. Are they romantically involved? Are they plotting something sinister? Are they using it as a method of escapism? Those questions don't normally rise with phone calls, and the reason is not clear to me. The romantic question may arise from heteronormative folks if the people on the call are different genders. But I wager that the same romantic question with the same participants arises faster when discussing a prolonged instant messenger conversation rather than a phone conversation. Even if less is said during a 30-minute instant messenger conversation compared to a 30-minute phone call, if both participants are standing by awaiting their reply, that implies a certain level of commitment to the conversation that might not be present with a phone call. Since the globalization of Hollywood, we can definitely say that watching violent movies does not cause violent behavior. And there must be another cause behind the violence epidemic in the USA. Furthermore, comparisons to countries like Switzerland confirm that gun ownership is not the cause either. Some have speculated that it is gun training which is the key. European countries with mandatory military service and gun training have significantly less gun violence than the USA, even in locations with similar gun ownership rates. If we could Thanos snap guns out of existence, would the USA develop a knife violence epidemic? That didn't happen in Australia when it banned guns, but some people claim that the mass stabbings in Western China would abruptly begin in the USA if they banned guns. Is it ethical to run this experiment in the real world, knowing it could cause slower deaths but would likely result in fewer deaths, with the possible exception of the initial gun collection? The problem with studying things at a nation level is the data begins to look small, even if it is technically representing more people. Gun ban in a single household, probably not going to lead to any violence. Gun ban in a gated community might actually reduce the risk of lethal confrontations, even if they're still threatening each other with baseball bats. Gun ban in a walled city, now you start to see risks of stabbings in dark alleys. Gun ban across a province or state, the outcome is more difficult to predict. Gun ban across a country probably depends a lot on the culture. Gun ban across the world, that's so infeasible that I can barely concentrate on the impact. Why does the same regulation, ban, action, restriction, freedom, or policy have such drastically opposed impacts when implemented on different scales? No one would bat an eye at a mom and pop delivery company hiring 3 or 4 workers who get no say in what things they transport. But expand that to a mayor deciding what can and can't be delivered by a municipal worker, and eyebrows start raising. Expand that to a president banning the import of certain things, and there's an outcry. You can't do that. You need agreement from the people and their representatives. What if a president or mayor mandated that people carry fobs or passports or GPS trackers when they travel on public property? As we come up with different examples, we blur the line between fiction and reality. A fob to enter or leave a company building is analogous to a passport required to enter or leave a country. Some more secure companies require fobs to travel from location to location even within a single building. Some more restrictive governments require IDs to travel to certain places within their country. It gets uncomfortable because it brings up thoughts of South African apartheid and 1930s Germany. Asking people for papers to prove that they're allowed to be there, is that really so different from immigrants needing to present their visa papers at routine traffic stops or when accessing public services? Pokemon Go or Tim Hortons asking to use your GPS location even while the app is closed is seen as a little weird by some, but overlooked by most people. If a government did that, you'd be worried you were about to be mysteriously disappeared until a reporter finds you in a gulag or in Guantanamo Bay. Maybe the difference is historical precedent. I got off track for the topic I wanted to bring up, as often occurs with rants, but I hope this sparked some thought. I was hoping to bring up pornography usage and how it relates to sexual behavior in real life. Trigger warning for the rest of the video. Nothing graphic, not even saying the name of the R word, but still, this is touchy enough. If you are uncomfortable, it might be best to just close the video now. This parallels the discussions of violent movies and video games that have been ongoing for 40 years. Pornography is the latest one people are divided on. I vaguely recall seeing statistics from the Middle East showing increased pornography availability led to reduced rates of sexual assault. And then, when some of their governments started reducing pornography availability, it led to an increase in sexual assaults. Sadly, I'm not that good at Google research, so the source is lost to me. I don't think the porn ban in the UK will have the same impact because of the availability of VPNs at the time of the ban. If the UK porn ban does increase sexual assault rates, even with this mitigating factor, then we'll know for sure that ethically produced porn protects women, and I hope everyone would advocate repealing the ban to reduce sexual assault rates. But what about unethically produced porn? What about CP? How do we stop it? Real ideas here, people. Don't just shout guillotines every time someone has a harmful behavior. What about drawings? Hentai, as some people call it. Could state funded hentai flooding the market decrease the demand for unethically produced adult pornography? If so, then what does that say about the fight against CP? Or, on the flip side, what if hentai is a gateway drug? What if the exaggerated proportions, flexibility, pain tolerance, and freedom of expression in hentai leads mild mannered people down a pipeline into extreme fetishes? I've heard some serial killers only did it because they couldn't get sexual satisfaction anymore without murdering their sexual victim. What if being able to explore those fantasies of non consent, hentai, lead people to develop fetishes for non consent in real life? And what if that's a gateway drug leading to sexual assault? I'm not using the R word here because I'm worried that YouTube might ban me, but you can replace the phrase sexual assault with that word in all my previous and future statements. These kinds of things are difficult to test because you don't know beforehand who is going to become a sexual assaulter or a child predator. Even if you could have a bunch of people going through clinical trials with various forms of hentai, sex dolls, all their alternatives to touching real humans, the results of such a study would likely be inconclusive. If one subject does become a child predator, was it because they were deprived of hentai? Was it because they were given hentai? Does having a sex doll satisfy them enough for their moral compass to overrule their desires? Or does having a sex doll let them practice and prepare to sexually assault people? Similar clinical trials with bestiality hentai could be done to prevent people from assaulting animals in real life, but it faces the same inconclusive pitfalls. Maybe that person was always destined to only take it so far before they didn't go further. Or maybe pornography offered them a less risky method of exploring those extremes and stopped them from taking it further in real life. Or maybe pornography allowed them to explore those extremes safely and get comfortable enough with them to actually try them in real life. The trials might be more conclusive if the subjects were people who already have the extreme fetish we're trying to discourage, but it would have to be something safe enough that they wouldn't try to hide it when they did act upon it in real life. If such a study were ever done, it could be used as a template by heterosupremacists or white supremacists to see if any forms of pornography or therapy or sex dolls could prevent people from acting out homosexual urges or interracial urges in real life. Here we are trying to help people, and the tools we theorize could easily be turned to hurt people. Is that risk sufficient for us to stop this road of scientific inquiry? Perhaps. Or maybe we just need to think of protections as we proceed cautiously. Sorry this video was so intense and heavy, but it is something that I've been thinking about for nearly 20 years now, and I had to get it off my chest.